Welcome, one and all. We have a very special guest today to review Chapter 949 of One Piece for the 22nd anniversary of the manga, presenting this cucumber. Cucumbers cannot talk, so instead I will translate. Okay. Hey everybody, how you doing? This will be One Piece Chapter 949 review titled Mummy, and yes, it is in fact the 22nd anniversary of One Piece. Technically it is on July 19th, and it was July 19th yesterday in Japan, but through the magic of time zones, woo, it is currently July 19th from where I'm at right now in the world. So yeah, 22nd anniversary, July 19th, 1997. That is insane. I was 4. I was 4 years old when that first, oh my god, that is nuts. I mean, there's plenty of you probably watching this right now that weren't even born or were like me very, very young when it first aired or first was released and Shonen Jump didn't even know it's about its existence. But that's crazy because, you know, I have some memories of when I was that young, like very select memories. Like I remember once when I was probably like around 2 or 3, I fell on the sidewalk and gashed my knee really bad, and I can kind of remember that, like the pain I felt. But most of my memories are, you know, when I was older than that. So pretty much every memory I have, every friend I've ever made, like from preschool all the way up through college, every job I've had, you know, everything, every connection I've ever made, every encounter, One Piece has always been there pretty much. It's been a crazy ride. But anyway, we got a cover page this week. We have the Straw Hats hanging out in a pool with a gorilla, and Luffy's eating a giant banana, so that's cool. Robin and Nami are in bikinis, so yes. The best thing about this whole thing, well actually there's two. One of them, not including Nami in a bikini, there's two. One is you get to see Chopper without his hat, which is something we very rarely get to see in the One Piece verse, okay? So there's Chopper without his hat, he's adorable. He has a very big head. And then of course we have Frankie with his original hairstyle. Let me tell you something right now, okay? When Frankie first appeared post-time skip and he had his, like, armored me, you know, a lot of people were kind of put off by that because it was such a drastic change for the character, you know? I was okay with that. The one thing I was kind of upset by was his hairstyle. And I know what Oda did. He's like, okay, we're gonna do this thing where we have, like, a different hairstyle for Frankie in every single arc, you know? So in, like, Dressrosa, he had, like, the battle hair. I understand why Oda did it. It's just every now and then it would be nice for him to go through like an entire story arc or even like a portion of a story arc with his original hairstyle. Now, there is an exception to this. For whatever reason, whenever Frankie goes inside of the Frankie Shogun in order to pilot it, his hair always reverts to his original type. But, you know, we haven't seen the Frankie Shogun in a while. Actually, the Frankie Shogun is currently on the Sunny, which is like in that bay area on the Curry region, so Frankie's kind of separated from it right now. But yeah, it'd be cool just for him to go back to like the regular hairstyle for maybe like, I don't know, a few dozen chapters just to see it again. But yeah, pretty cool cover page. And of course, you know, a lot of celebration going on. We got 22nd anniversary and Stampede is hitting theaters in only a few weeks. So get into it. All right, so this will be chapter 949 titled Mummy. So that means we're definitely going to find out, you know, Luffy's mom in this chapter. Finally, it's happening. Whether Luffy's mom is going to be a revolutionary or a celestial dragon or is going to go into an isekai anime with Luffy, I have no idea, but I guess we'll find out. All right, so last chapter, what happened last chapter? It's like 2-week break. Oh yeah, epic posing. Yeah, we had epic posing, okay? We had Kiku, we had Raizo, we had Kawamatsu, we had Luffy, we had Hyo, all striking epic poses, and all of the Udon prison was basically just taken aback because they, of course, recognized Kiku and Raizo and Kawamatsu as members of the 9 Red Scabbards. Luffy's there. Hyo is, of course, a veteran. He was the member of the Yakuza, the leader of the Yakuza back in the day. So the general idea was, once the prisoners get to see all of these, like, big names, you know, like from the past of Wano, you know, people they thought were dead for 20 years, that will give them hope and desire. I'm gonna put this cucumber down now. It's like cucumbers are the most, like, provocative type of vegetable out there, you know what I mean? But okay, anyway. Yeah, we're going to do epic posing, and so we're going to inspire everybody. All right, so all the prison guards, they take out their pistols that are firing those excitement bullets, those plague bullets at everybody. They try to hit the main group, but that's not going to happen. Of course, Luffy has observation hockey. He can dodge those things all night and day, not a problem there. Even if, like, I'm assuming most of them have observation, but even if they didn't, you know, their natural training, like, Raizo's a ninja, for God's sake. Even if Raizo didn't have observation, he's been training in the art of ninjutsu his entire life. He can dodge a few bullets. I mean, something rather impossible in our world, but this is One Piece, you know. People could definitely do that. So, you know, Luffy just uses some haki, just starts knocking down some prison guards. The guards, led by Daifugo, who is the scorpion dude, you know, he's the one that came out with those bullets to begin with, explaining what the plague bullets are. You know, Queen created them. We get to find out a little bit more about the plague bullets this time, exactly what the name of the disease is that's afflicting everybody, right? But, yeah, they decide, you know, don't shoot at the main core of people, just shoot at the prisoners, because it's a highly infectious disease. That's why Queen made it. You know, so you could just shoot one person with this. They start being inflicted by this really crazy high fever, and they start splouting blood everywhere. Now all they have to do is just touch somebody, and it's like a really highly contagious, like, zombie virus or something, to touch them, and it just, no, you know. So fire at the prisoners, and then eventually the infection will spread to the you know, to the core group of people, like Luffy and everybody. Now, I just wanted to bring up at this point, I didn't mention it last time because I didn't really think of it, you know, you gotta be really careful when firing off these plague bullets, okay? The name of it is literally plague bullets, or excitement bullets. It sounds very similar in Japanese. It's like a pun. But anyway, because unless the guards have like some sort of cure for this disease, which it's possible they might, you know, if this gets out of hand, you know, the guards could get afflicted, the headliners could get afflicted in some way, unless Queen did something to like Baba Nuki and the other headliners there to like make them immune to the disease in some way. I'm not sure if that's possible. But yeah, I mean, you can't just be firing these things willy-nilly around. One person gets touched that's a security guard, and everything's kind of going to go south here. The whole prison is going to get afflicted with this plague, you know, the prisoners and the guards and the headliners alike. So you got to be really careful when firing these things off, right? But at any rate, as you could probably imagine, Chopper in particular is pretty mad at what they're doing, you know, using a disease as a weapon, you know, hence why he was so mad at Caesar for, you know, creating all these gas weapons, experimenting on the kids at Punk Hazard, the gas weapon that was used at Zoe. So Chopper's really mad about this, Luffy's really mad about this, so you know what you got then. You got yourself a Gumu Gumu no Heavy Stamp combo attack. You know, it's really cool to see the Straw Hats combo, because you don't get to see that. It's been a while, right? It's been a while since they've teamed up. You know, you had the Super Frapper Gong when Frankie and Chopper went to go punch oars at the same time. That was a lot of fun. You have Sanji's rubber shot where he just flings Luffy. You have, it's going to be upgraded now, but you had like the 600 million berry jackpot when all the Straw Hats at Thriller Bark, at least all the ones that were present, used like their like attacks to defeat all the zombies at once. You know, I want to see more of those combo attacks and everything. This is pretty simple. It's just Luffy using his Gumu Gumu no Stamp, so just a regular just kick, but you know, Chopper's using his heavy gong, which is just his regular punch when he's in his heavy point form at the same time, and they just burst through a bunch of guards like that. So, you know, kind of a little nice scene there. We see Kiku dancing beautifully and slicing down a bunch of guards in the process, one of which I think might have been a Gorilla Smile user, or might just been a very apish kind of dude, but he has like the teeth, so I'm assuming he is actually a smile user. Kawamatsu uses Yori Kiri, which is just another sumo move. It's pretty much established that every single move Kawamatsu's got in his repertoire are named after various sumo moves, so I guess at one point I'm gonna have to sit down and read all about sumo and the different techniques and what makes them different, and we'll make a little catalog for Kawamatsu's moves, because he's used like, I think he's used like 2 or 3 sumo moves up to this point, plus the name of his sword, Satsumo, I think was the name of it. Might be missing the pronunciation of that a little bit, but that's also a reference to sumo moves, so yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to, like, you know, chart exactly what these moves, like what makes them different and everything like that. We have Raizo busting out a move called Lightning Shuriken or Thunder Shuriken in some of the translations I've read. I like to imagine that it's just like Shuriken, but they're just ridiculously fast. You know, like Shuriken that are just raining down on everybody there. He also, Raizo takes the keys and tosses them over to Kid and Killer, and it's like, hey, friends of Luffy Taro, please free yourselves and join us in this melee. And so you have a scene with Kid, who after like the keys are dropped right in front of him, and Kid just kind of has this look like, you know, I don't know what it was. It just made me think like Kid is kind of like Tsundere there, where he's just like, I don't need your help freeing me, Baka. You know, but no, it's seriously, like, because think of it from Kid's perspective here. I mean, Kid, he's not the kind of character that's going to show deep gratitude to Luffy, or he doesn't want to. All right, in this situation, maybe he's struggling with it, where he's just like, man, we were kind of at death's door there. We were being at the mercy of Queen, and then, you know, Big Mom burst in, and then, but it was like Luffy's group that managed to give us the keys and free us and everything. So I think Kid is kind of struggling with it, because I like to think, you know, he still has a code of conduct. It's not like Kid is just this horribly brutal guy to even his own crewmates. He's a tough kind of captain. He's a little bit of a sadistic kind of captain even. But he still cares about Killer and the other members of his crew, so he does have a code of conduct. So at that moment, Kid probably realized, crap, I'm gonna owe Luffy something now. I have to owe him a debt. And that's not something Kid wants, so he's struggling with it. He's just like, oh man, should I take those keys? Because if I take those keys and I get freed, sure, but I'm gonna have to owe a debt to that dude, and I don't want to owe a debt to freaking Luffy. But then Killer, you know, Killer's off to the side. He's still on the ground, like, panting and laughing, like, So now it might be even more of a debt when you think about it, because not only has Luffy's group managed to save Kid, they also saved Killer, his subordinate. So now Kid's just basically stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's like, he has to make sure Killer gets out of here and try to figure out a way to save him, maybe try to find a cure to the effects of the smile or something, because Kid knows about Killer's, like, laugh and how he hates it, but he's being forced to do it. So yeah, Kid is certainly struggling with some emotions right now. We don't actually see him pick up the keys in this chapter, so we don't know what he does. We assume that he does, we just don't know. He certainly doesn't join in on the fight for right now, so just pause for that. We'll probably catch back to that next chapter or something. So, a few of the prisoners get hit with the plague bullets. They fall on the ground. We actually get to see the bullets have little tiny skulls on them, or it might be like when the bullets hit you, the disease begins to spread with the effect of like a skull, but that's a little bit kind of, you know, I mean, it's possible, but I think it makes more sense for the bullets themselves to just be shaped like, have little cartoon skulls on them, so when they get shot by them, it starts with this little skull, and the infection begins to spread out, like, oh no, it's happening, ah, and they just collapse on the ground, and they're not dead yet. It's not an immediate death. It's like you become, as Daifugo explains, you become a mummy eventually, because it causes this ridiculously high fever. All the moisture is eventually going to get drained out of your body. You just have incredible pain, just burning agony all over you. Blood begins to spurt out all over you. You begin to hemorrhage and all that stuff. So that's all horrible, but you're not dead quite yet. And in fact, when they're in this state, Daifugo commands the prisoners to stand up, because they've still been conditioned, being in, you know, prisoners of Udon for as long as they have been, to listen when the guards order them around. So even in this half-dead state where they're probably even barely conscious, they can't even really probably think of anything rationally because they have such a high fever, you know, Daifugo's like, stand, prisoners, and take down the intruders. And so then you have basically like a zombie island kind of like thing where it's just like, it's terror time again. You know, they're making a sequel to Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, and I saw the trailer for it, and I'm gonna hold off judgment until it comes out, but it's gonna be really hard to make a decent sequel to that movie. That's my favorite Scooby-Doo movie of all time. Just the modern animation, I think, is going to change it, because that was like a much more older, kind of gritty animation when they first did it back in the 90s that had such a creepy feel to that movie. I love it. But yeah, no, this is basically that. You have a bunch of like mummy zombies rising up and like, and so, yeah, this is kind of scary. But even more scarier than their appearance is their attitude. It's just depressing, really. They're, even after witnessing everything, even seeing Okiku and Raizo and Kawamatsu arrive, you know, these are the fabled members of the Kozuki clan that after 20 years they will return and save this land. This is the prophecy coming into fruition, and even the prisoners are still kind of skeptical about it, because they've lived through this for 20-something years, many of which have probably spent most of that 20 years in this prison, away from their families. Their families might have been, you know, wiped out by Kaido and Orochi. Their whole villages might have been wiped out, you know? And so they basically just, they're pleading with Luffy and everybody like, you know, this wouldn't have been this way if you would have just left. Why did you outsiders have to get involved here? We were perfectly content living in this prison. We were fine with it. We just got used to it over the years. Then you had to show up and you had to screw us over. It doesn't matter if you're the 9 Red Scabbards. I don't care about prophecies. It's whatever. You can't win. like even the prisoners even say like they're like half freaking semi-conscious right now, half semi-conscious, so they're a quarter conscious. But no, they're just like, do you see the weapon that this is just one of the weapons that just one of Kaido's subordinates has created. Queen himself, his epithet is the plague. So, and even Daifugo confirms, yeah, this isn't the end-all be-all. There's plenty of other diseases and plagues that Queen has cooked up. This just happens to be the one they're using right now, called Mummy. I'm hoping that the other ones are also named after, like this is the zombie disease, or this is the, I don't know, the ghost disease, or something like that. Like various, like, you know, spooky things that haunt you in the night. You know, this is the, I don't know, the swamp disease, swamp monster disease that has your flesh melt off you or something like that. You know, the Toxic Avenger disease. I don't know. But this is just one of these. Queen has a whole armory full of that, and plus he can turn into a giant brachiosaur, and if that wasn't good enough for you, you still have King and all the stuff he can do. I finally got a brachiosaur and a pteranodon. It's a pterodactyl, but close enough. You try finding a pteranodon figure, but I finally got him, so we're good to go with that. He's like, you got King, you got Jack, you got a whole legion of headliners that are all smile users. You got the 6 flying captains, which are the strongest smile users of the headliners. You got there's just like an army of pleasures and waiters below that. Plus, that's not even getting into Orochi's side of things, where Orochi commands all these really strong samurai and the Onibawan and everything. Like, you have to understand the prisoner's perspective here. It's just like, okay, that's really cool, you have badass posing and everything, but you're like a dozen people, like less than a dozen people against all of that. You cannot win. Why did you get involved? You know, now we're all gonna die because of that, you know? So they're hearing all of that, and Kawamatsu and everybody, Kiku takes off her mask, and she just kind of like looking at everybody, and she's like, oh God, because it's like that she's been gone for so long. Kawamatsu's been chained up, but he's been stuck here. You know, Kawamatsu probably more than anybody. I mean, he had a really strong, unbendable will. That's why he was still willing to fight, because he has that. He has that loyalty to Odin, but not the other prisoners. They don't all have that. Their wills were probably broken years ago. They were probably broken within the first few months they were in the prison. Even if you take somebody that was really like steadfastly loyal to the old order of things with Odin and Sukiyaki and everybody, you know, after a few months in the Udon prison, their spirits were probably broken. It's like, you know what, I don't even care anymore about Odin. Let me just, I guess this is just life from now on. And so, after hearing all of this, Luffy's reaction to this, he's a real bro. He just steps up to everybody. They're all like, get away! And he just stretches out his arms and just basically like, okay, one perspective of this is he's doing it to prevent them from advancing forward. You know, like he stretches out his arms kind of like a blockade, so it's just like, so they can't go further. But another way of looking at it is he's going to hug everybody. He's just like, it'll be okay, come here. So he hugs them all, which of course means he's making bodily contact, which of course means the disease instantly begins to affect Luffy. You see the infection on his body creeping up around his eyes. You see his body beginning to like swell up and like get really like red hot because of the fever. His nose begins to bleed, and Luffy's just like, what overwhelming power are you talking about? This is nothing! So he's like, that's like Luffy's like show of like, I can take whatever Kaido can throw at me. You guys are talking about how strong Kaido is, how strong all of his minions are, and all the stuff they can do to us, and there's just no way we can fight against that overwhelming, crushing power. And Luffy's reaction to that is like, okay, I'm gonna show you rather than tell you. You know, it's one thing to do epic posing and be like, we're here to save you. It's another thing to actually show you. So he walks up and just like embraces all of them and just takes that disease, and he's just like, is this that overwhelming power you talked about? This is nothing. If this is the best they got, you know, we got this. It's no problem. Hell, we could even take more than this. It's fine. And so, at first you're gonna think like, well, Luffy, because of his little stint in Impel Down, his fight with Magellan, has a high immunity to poisons, and we've seen that before in One Piece. But, Luffy, I'm sorry to tell you, diseases and poisons, not the same thing, all right? Not even close. Chopper's freaking out. He's like, Luffy, Luffy, what are you doing? Get away from them! You know, everybody's freaking out, but Chopper in particular. Now, keep in mind, Chopper, you know, he's right there. So if anybody's gonna figure out a way to cure it, it's gonna be him, and he's located right over yonder. I'm sure there might be a medical, like an infirmary somewhere in the prison that they can go into, and Chopper could cook up a cure for it. They might even find the cure. Like I said, what happens if one of the guards or one of the headliners accidentally gets hit with one of those plague bullets? I think there has to be some way to cure them, right? So Chopper might find that or make some more if he has to. He'll be fine. But yeah, Luffy, don't think that like he has a lot of willpower, so he's exhibiting the same exact symptoms as everybody else is, like a high fever and everything. It's just Luffy, because he's so strong, he has such a powerful will, he's able to just kind of, you know, power through it, just like, yep. Lightheaded, like 105-degree fever. Yeah, I got this. What was the highest fever you've ever had? When I was like in middle school, I think I got a fever of well over 100 degrees. Like it was getting to the point where my mom was like concerned we had to go to the hospital. I remember it was like, it's like 102, 103. It was getting up there. And so she put me in like this cold bathtub, because it's just like, okay, yeah, we don't want to go to the, it was getting pretty high there. But yeah, this is probably even worse than that. And he's like geysering blood all over his body and stuff. But yeah, while embracing everybody, Luffy also reminds them, he kind of gives them like a little bit of insight, because they probably didn't even think about it, because it's just this has been their life for so long. Luffy reminds them, he's just like, this is life to you, this is what's okay, this is what's good enough for you, you know, working your bodies to the bone, to exhaustion, just to get one little piece of dango at the end of the day, that is nothing. You are slaves, every single one of you. I think you just forgot about it. And that was a huge, you can imagine, that was a huge wake-up call to every prisoner in that place, whether it be the ones afflicted by the disease or not. Like, they realized, like, holy crap, he's right. We just kind of accepted it as, like, just that's what life was. But yeah, so Luffy kind of pushes them all back to the ground, and they fall, and, you know, some of them get back up, and they just have this look on their face like, what has become of our lives? I wanted to be a blacksmith when I grew up, and now I'm working my hands to the bone for a piece of dango. This is ridiculous. You know, they all started to really question their lives and everything, and really maybe look at Luffy as somebody that could actually take on Kaido and his crew, right? He also, and keep in mind, Luffy, he's kind of like faltering at this point. He's like geysering blood, and he's just like, I made a promise to a little girl that can pull dango out of her cheek that I would make this country right again. I would provide enough food for this place. I would save this land. Also, probably a lot of that is because of Ace, you know, because Tama knew Ace. Tama explained the whole thing with Ace to Luffy. And I think Luffy, even if he's not like intentionally doing it, just like subconsciously, it's like, I need to do this for Ace's legacy, for his sake. So that's probably another really big reason why he's so dead set on saving this land, and protecting Tama, and, you know, protecting everybody in this case, you know, dethroning Orochi, getting rid of Kaido and everything. We even get a pan-out shot of Udon, like away from the prison, like a decent way, like in the wastelands, and we see this skull just lying out in the middle of the wastelands, just to kind of show, you know, the land that Wano, once beautiful from, you know, the time of Odin, has now become just a wasteland of just death and detritus from Kaido's group. Detritus, that's a word you don't get to use very often. I love that one, detritus. It just means like dust, or, you know, death and dust, death and refuse, that kind of stuff. Okay, so Tama is of course still there, and she's witnessing Luffy say all this stuff, and I'm sure Tama is having flashbacks to Ace and everything, and all the stuff that he said, but also Luffy, that he can actually do this, okay? And so Luffy, probably with one of the last ounces of his strength he's really got, he's just like, we're here to defeat Kaido! And he just shouts to the entire prison, and that's probably the last moment that, like, swayed most of the prisoners over to their side, okay? And Hyo is off to the side, and he's like, man, this kid has impeccable leadership, talking about the stuff that Mihawk mentioned back during the time of Marineford, how Luffy just has this natural innate ability to get people to follow him. All the prisoners are beginning to cry, like, are you serious? It kind of reminds me a lot of Robin, when Robin was having her moment at the Tower of Le, and how, you know, Robin had resigned herself to her fate, but then the Straw Hats came all the way to Annie's lobby to rescue her, and Robin had a moment where she sat there, and it was like, it was finally like beginning to crack all that, all those emotions she had for years, where she just accepted the fact that she was the devil child and that this was just her inevitable fate. You could really visually see the moment that cracks in her, and she realizes, wait, maybe it's okay for me to live. Maybe it's okay for me to try to live my life how I want to. And that's a moment, it's obviously not as expressive, you know, there, because it's like we don't get a moment with all the prisoners, like, crying their eyes out, but they're beginning to weep, and they're beginning to, like, I think, can he actually do it? I don't know. I mean, if anybody's gonna do it, I guess I mean, he's pretty strong, and look at all the people he has backing him, and if the Kozuki clan are back, you know, maybe we can actually do this. I'm like, you mean we could go back to the way we were? Like, Kaido could be defeated, and Orochi, and the country could go back to, you know, the way it was 20 years ago? Like, maybe. It's possible. And it's like, okay, can we do this, buddy? We can do this, buddy! You know, and so it's kind of a moment like that. It's a real tearjerker, right? Babanuki doesn't think so, though. Babanuki's like, alright, it's getting a little too sentimental for this. Alright, so bust out the emergency plague, what's it called? The plague excitement shell. Alright, so it's basically like a buckshot version of the plague bullet, where it's just like basically this cannonball-sized shell that has a bunch of the plague bullets inside of it. He puts it inside of his elephant's trunk, and he does that, you know, cannon attack that he did earlier, explode it out, and then the buckshot just goes everywhere and just afflicts everybody with an immediate surrounding area. And there's like 200 of the plague bullets in this one cannonball mortar. So he stuffs that inside of his elephant, and he's like, it's over, you can't stop me now! And everyone's like, oh no! And then Luffy just kind of walks over to freaking Babanuki, and Luffy's just kind of like, alright, I'm really dizzy right now. It's just, he's so nonchalantly just walks over, grabs the elephant's trunk, and just ties it in a freaking knot, and Babanuki's like, what? And he's like, I looked into the future a little bit, and it didn't seem that nice, so I tied this up instead. Alright, have fun. And Luffy just walks away, because he probably burned out a lot of his energy doing that really motivational speech, so he's kind of exhausted, plus the disease. That's probably another reason. And Babanuki's like, what? What? No! And it just explodes inside of him. Babanuki's dead, by the way. Like, there's no way he's surviving that. Like, just from the backfire of the explosion itself, like, without even getting the plague excitement shell in there, we saw what happened earlier when he just did his normal, like, just elephant, you know, cannon thing. You know, it was a big enough explosion when he just did that. You know, this has, like, actual ammunition in there, and it just backfired like 200 plague bullets just inside of his body at once, like shrapnel into his lungs and his heart, and he's DOA. He's just, boom, he's hitting the ground and he's not getting back up, period. Half of his body should be gone after this, okay? But yeah, Daifugo and Solitaire, they ain't doing anything about this. They're not even stepping in. Daifugo does order the prisoners to kind of stop because they're beginning to, like, rally around him, like, And Daifugo's like, hey, whoa. You prisoners remember what happens. This is Queen's prison. You remember what happens if you talk or you do anything out of line. And the prisoners are just like, yeah, we know. Yeah, I don't know if you got this. Here's a memo. We are rebelling. Here you go. So that kind of means we don't care what you do. We're gonna beat the crap out of you, you know, and that's a foregone conclusion. All right, so, you know. So, yeah, now, we don't have the epic prison break kind of moment I was hoping we were gonna get, where, like, all the prisoners rally up, pick up weapons, and just beat the crap out of all the other headliners, like Daifugo and Solitaire and all the other smile users. No, we just kind of, you know, pan out from the Udon prison, and we just get a bunch of screams of agony as all the prison guards are, you know, knocked down, and, you know, the prisoners take over the place, and we get a caption that states, this is 8 days before the final battle, and Udon prison was taken without the main enemy's, you know, forces knowing, because the snails were deactivated, so they couldn't get this information back to Kaido. Queen obviously already left. Now, because the snails were taken off, even Queen cannot communicate back with Udon, but still, eventually, Queen, you think, unless something happens with the Big Mom convoy, is gonna go back to the prison and find the state that it's in. So, for right now, they don't know, but the idea that they're going to go 8 days without them finding out that Udon Prison has been taken over, yeah, there's no way. Somebody's going to find out within the next day or so that it just takes one person. It just takes one scout from the Beast Pirates or the Orochi's group to see that the Udon Prison is taken over and just report back to Kaido. That's all it's going to take. So they're not going to be able to keep them in the dark for this long, but for the moment, they have, and that's important, that no reinforcements are coming right at this moment. So that gives them enough time to restrain all of the Smile users and the headliners, or maybe do some other stuff with them. That gives the Chopper enough time to go and try to find a cure. That gives Kawamatsu time to go out and find some cucumbers to eat. Oh, they're very cold. This is a hot room right now, and this is a very cold cucumber. Okay. But, yeah. And the last panel is just Hyo stating, you know, you have gained a powerful ally, Kinemon. Kinemon, you've garnered a powerful ally. So Hyo is aware of Kinemon, which we kind of always figured. You know, Hyo knew who the 9 Red Scabbards are. I'm sure Hyo was maybe even friends with Odin and Sukiyaki back in the day, so he would obviously be aware of their existence. So yeah, now as to what's going to happen next chapter, whether we're just going to continue with this, I feel like we're not. I feel like we're going to cut away next chapter. We're going to go see something else, and then like maybe 2 or 3 chapters from now, we'll cut back to Udon Prison, maybe even by the next act. Maybe the act is going to be winding down soon, and maybe at chapter 950. 950, that's a nice round number. That's an easy way to end Act 2. And then, you know, we're eventually going to cut back to Udon a few days later, maybe, or a few hours later than this, where Luffy is recovering from his disease, Chopper cured all the prisoners, everybody's tied up, and the prison has kind of been situated in a way that's appropriate, and then they're getting ready to go and lead into the rebellion, go and find Kinemon and everybody, right? So, yeah, it's going to take a while, but I just have a feeling we're going to cut back to, like, Sanji's group or Zoro next chapter, going to see what's going on with that. But, yeah, other than that, very, very solid chapter, made completely worth it by Luffy's speech to all the prisoners. You know, it's a very Luffy-esque thing to do, because we've been in this situation before. Maybe not quite as hopeless as this, where even the prisoners, even the civilians are like, you know, we can't even win, we can't even leave a dent, don't even try, just keep it the way it is. And Luffy also had another line I forgot to mention. He says, just because I'm an outsider, why does that mean, because the prisoners keep referring to Luffy as an outsider. You outsiders ruin everything, and just like, why is me being an outsider, why does that matter? Why cannot an outsider save this land? And I'm sure there was another epiphany moment where all this, like, well, I mean, if you really, I'm sure the prisoners were kind of murmuring with each other, like, well, if you think about it, like, everybody in the country has fallen to Kaido and Orochi. Yeah, so I guess if anybody were to save the country, they would have to come from outside of Wano. Shit, I think the kid has a point there. So yeah. Oh, also, and Kid and Killer. I hope we get an update on them. I'm sure they freed themselves from their shackles, and Kid might have a moment where, like, Luffy's like he's kind of woozy. He's just like, hey there, you're freed. That's cool. And then Kid just kind of grabs him by his collar and just like, listen up, Kid. Just because you freed me doesn't mean I'm gonna hold you to. I mean, just because I owe you doesn't mean I owe you. And Luffy's just like, okay, that's lovely. Kid's like, damn it! All right, Killer, whatever. Let's get out of here. You know, so, yeah, it might be kind of a moment like that. But I think from this moment on, yeah, Kid, whether he likes it or not, he's going to be helping out the rebellion. He kind of has to at this point, right? I mean, he wants to beat up Kaido just as much as Luffy does, so he's going to help out regardless. But for this reason, I think he's going to have to be a direct, you know, he's going to have to help out the rebellion directly rather than just going off and doing it on his own. You know what I mean? But yeah, and oh, the whole mummy thing was really gruesome. I mean, if it wasn't for the My Hero Academia chapter this week, I would say that was the most gruesome thing I saw in Shonen Jump this week. But no, that hero chapter, that was intense, wasn't it? Yeah, okay, no spoilers, but damn. I wanted to end this out by talking about the latest tragedy that occurred in Kyoto. I'm sure we're all aware of it at this point. The arson that happened at KyoAni, the animation studio in Kyoto, Japan. It was confirmed, last time I checked, it was over 30 people that died in the attack, was what it was. Apparently somebody, I don't know the whole story on who, what the intention was behind it, but it was certainly, you know, intended. A guy came in with a bunch of gasoline and just set the building up. So right now, in terms of, like, if you would like to donate, the only thing I can can tell you for certain, 100%, is to go to their digital download store. I'll put a link to that below, and you can just buy stuff from them, and that's a good way to support them. Sentai Filmworks has a GoFundMe, which I donated to. There was a little bit of a debate whether or not KyoAni is going to accept the money, but this is done by Sentai Filmworks, so they most likely will, and so I'll leave that link down there below. But like I said, if you just want to like support them, just, you know, like a surefire way, 100%, I would just go to the digital store and get stuff from there. But, you know, like I said, I'm pretty sure they're going to accept the money from the GoFundMe. It was something like within the first 12 hours, it's way more than that now, but within the first 12 hours, they raised over like 800,000. So the reception from the community has been very gracious. We can all come together whenever something like horrible like this happens. Thanks to everybody that donated, and thanks for watching, everybody. So this will be Tekking101 signing out. See you back here next week. Huh. I guess I'm not a Kappa. Also, I'm sorry. I said I was going to get 7 cucumbers, but I only got 4. 4 cucumbers. I can't do anything right!